This video represents the fourth and final part of my story. In it, I'll be sharing some of my experiences at my current location, which includes being messaged and eventually threatened by a court martial via WhatsApp.
This stopped jury duty. Remember, innocent until proven. Well, he did it, right? We all agree he did it.
Now, after moving from the room in Bridgetown, I stayed at an Airbnb in Wanstead before being forced to move again within the space of a few weeks. Then I moved to an area in Holetown, which I can only describe as very suburban. The harassment took a few weeks to really kick into high gear, and at first, it started out with people cutting grass all day, every day, even when there was no grass left to cut. It would be like a choir of lawnmowers and leaf blowers rotating between houses all day, every day. In addition to the lawnmowers, there were constant drilling noises throughout the day. Hammering, dragging, and kicking garbage cans. These people got real creative with the suburban noises. As part of the package, someone would blow a high-pitched whistle at intervals during the course of the day that would get the dogs barking with intense barking noises at night that sounded more like a recording than actual dogs. There were also high-pitched noises around my studio that would go off all day and night, possibly some new variation of an anti-loitering device. Now, during the night, these sounds were vaguely like some kind of cricket or whistling frog. And during the day, it sounded like a type of bird. But still, it was unmistakable that it was an electronic sound since it came from the same fixed locations and persisted all day and all night, every day. Among all this, a character would set up shop and cut coconuts under the street light right outside my apartment. At first, he would show up during the day to do this. Then, over a matter of weeks, he began turning up later and later until he was showing up at around 11 in the night and 12 in the night to cut coconuts and make noise all night until morning. He would make slashing sounds with his cutlass. That was unlike anything I have ever heard before. I mean, even after witnessing several coconut vendors in the city conduct their daily trade. He would also throw objects, kick the garbage cans, and just generally make all kinds of noises outside all night. And to my surprise, he also did this during heavy rains.
It's 2 in the morning, you understand? And many days you'll hear 3 in the morning and 4 in the morning. And all sort of nonsense. Once upon a time, you used to come here evening. Now you're showing up at 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock. 12 o'clock at night to cut coconuts. 3 in the morning. But not consistently. You sit down, come back and then sit down, disappear, come back. So nothing about it is uniform or usual. I can't tell you what not to do. I'm telling you this whole setup here. The times, the cutting coconuts in the rain. You, boss man, is cut coconuts in the rain. I can't tell you don't cut coconuts in the rain. I'm telling you it is.
What the rain is do?
Right, I can't tell you don't cut coconuts in the rain.
Do?
I can't tell you.
What the rain is do?
Right, I'm telling you.
So you
all of this together.
You do a bit.
At 3 o'clock in the morning.
You do a bit.
The rain falling at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you're cutting coconuts in the rain.
You do a bit.
Alright, so you're saying basically because you're this bad, you could cut coconuts at 3 o'clock in the morning in the rain, correct?
Now what you want to say?
And what you want to say is what has happened. So I come out here at 2 to speak with you to find out why at 2 you have the operation going and it ain't even consistent.
Use the police.
Boss man, I live right there. You understand? The person you're disturbing ain't that person up there or that person over there. It is me that right there. So I come to speak with you. You understand? At 2 in the morning, I gotta be out here speaking with you. You feel like I'm out here?
I could tell he wasn't legitimately in the business of selling coconut water because he was set up in a cul-de-sac in the suburbs where there were no customers except for a few houses, and he didn't even live in the area. My landlord, who lives in one of the apartments on the compound, also participates heavily in the harassment, going as far as to sometimes pretend to cut already cut grass as a kind of demonstration to me that they were not only willing to go all out to harass me, but that they were determined to do things that were so outrageous, yet so ordinary, that it would be impossible to explain what was going on without sounding like a paranoid schizophrenic. Since living here, I've experienced numerous occasions where these organized harassers would color coordinate. For example, they would all wear a red shirt and place red flags on their cars, etc. What was most surprising to me was, and this is not at all to be racist in any way, I'm just making an observation, but many of my neighborhood harassers were white people. I thought it strange that these well-off people would partake in these shenanigans since they didn't have anything to gain from it. Around the end of October 2024, I kept seeing missed calls on my cell phone from a number I didn't recognize. Since my epiphany in Bridgetown, I had stopped taking any calls, mostly because I just didn't have the energy to deal with some kind of trick or trap. Usually, my phone was kept on silent, and I barely used it except to glance at social media or check the time. So it was curious to me that for many days in a row I kept seeing these missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Initially, I simply ignored it. But then I received a WhatsApp message from a person who identified himself as Shane Wiseman, a Supreme Court Marshal. Now, despite him identifying himself as Shane Wiseman, I noticed that the name showing under his WhatsApp picture was Paul Ford. Now, after he identified himself as a Supreme Court Marshal, I became curious about what the issue might be, thinking that, finally, I might be able to get some answers behind this harassment. Regretfully, I made the mistake of giving him a call, and he began the conversation by coyly asking me how I was doing. When I noticed his fox in the henhouse sounding tone, I gave the response, well, it depends on what you say next. He laughed and said that I was summoned to court to act as a juror. I found it strange that after months of intense harassment, even by law enforcement, that suddenly now I was being summoned to act as a juror. I apologized and told him, well, I would not be able to attend, and he said that I couldn't just decline, that I needed to sign some documents in order to get out of the obligation. He then asked me where I was located so he could bring these documents to me right away. Now, it was after 4:30 p.m. and I was confused, critical, offended, suspicious, and taken aback by his sudden willingness to come to me right away. The whole thing was suspicious to me, and considering all the harassment I was going through, I found it hard to believe that he was an actual Supreme Court Marshal. And even if he, by some stretch of the imagination, was indeed a court martial, I couldn't imagine how I was being harassed for a perceived crime, but yet still asked to come and serve as a juror. I honestly lamented returning the call. I gave him only part of the directions to my home and told him that I would give him the remaining directions when he got closer. And then I ignored his calls after that. 3 days later, he sent me another WhatsApp message stating that if I didn't show up for court the next day, which would have been Tuesday, October 29th, that there would be a warrant issued for my arrest. I thought to myself, well, not only was this entire situation highly irregular, but if this gentleman was indeed a Supreme Court Marshal, messaging and threatening me on WhatsApp, then what hope have I for the justice system? After doing some research, I was stunned to find out that from a strictly legal point of view, unless I am officially charged or formally notified of criminal proceedings, I remain technically eligible for jury duty, which means that it isn't unlawful for the court system to summon me. Now, without proper formal documentation, the legal foundation for jury duty obligations has not been established, and legally speaking, there's a minimal difference between having ignored the marshal entirely versus returning his call informally. So there was no way that I should be under any legal obligation simply due to an informal phone call. Yet he threatens with a warrant for my arrest over WhatsApp. I wouldn't be surprised if they added that warrant onto the fake file of evidence that they have built up and used to rally the community against me for crimes I did not commit, nor can dispute, since it is virtually impossible to seek recompense for a mismanaged, informal police investigation. This is the state of the justice system in Barbados. More corruption than you can shake a stick at. The only thing I can hope for at this point is to appeal to the public directly and make it known that this whole see something, say something campaign and rallying of citizens to become informants of the state is a ruse. Each of you are playing a part to assault and ruin unsuspecting people who are innocent of any crime. And you are doing it under the careful guidance of a charismatic leader and those placed in positions of authority but are corrupt. Remember this: Hitler and Mussolini were also charismatic leaders. That is all I have to say. Surveillance state.
We've had our integrity legislation defeated in the Senate. That was in 2020. We've brought it again. I don't know what it will turn out like on this occasion. But in the meantime, as I said, we've passed a new Anti-Corruption Act. We've also brought to the statute books whistleblower protection. We've also brought new public procurement legislation, which attempts to ensure that there's transparency in all of our procurement processes. And we've also established by statute a special agency to deal with anti-corruption issues. All of these things we've done because we want to underscore the importance of accountability for all public servants. None of them are going to be popular. We also had to bring in investigators from overseas. Not that number, but we had to bring in investigators from overseas because in a country with just under 300,000 people, everybody knows everybody. If you don't go to school with somebody else, you went to the same school, your children probably go to the same Sunday school, and it's really very difficult in a small society like ours to be able to convincingly pursue matters in terms of investigation where acts of dishonesty are involved. That particular minister was charged with money laundering, not with corruption, because the alleged corrupt act took place in Barbados, but the funds were routed from Bermuda to the US, and then the whole thing fell apart. There's a huge discussion as to whether we're doing enough to tackle the issue. Now, one of our failings is that because historically we have not done a lot of investigative work in this kind of area, our people are trained, but I think Sarah and I were having a discussion recently, training without practice is just having possession of the theory.